Plummeting ratings, plummeting reviews, but it now looks like Meghan Markle has worn out that welcome mat from the streaming giant Netflix. Oh yes, as ever, let me explain. Morning, nice to see you chums in the very heart, or should I say from the very heart of West Yorkshire, Leeds, West Yorkshire of course, famous for many different things. And for many people who are around the world who visited this wonderful part of the United Kingdom, you will know that this is the home of, for 25 years, that wonderful TV programme, The Good Old Days, from the world famous City Varieties. Every major star appeared here, the likes of Howard Keel, Eartha Kitt, all those big names, willing of course to go on the stage, literally to relive the good old days. And I have also, naturally you would have assumed, appeared on that particular stage. And what's fascinating, let you into a secret, for those in the showbiz know, there's only one side off, right? You can only go on one side. If you go off the other side, you have to wait until the other act's finished. Not many people know that. And before you ask, no, that wasn't me that made that mistake. But it's always good to know, isn't it? Let's get back, of course, to your royal story of the day. Well, Meghan Markle came and went, more or less, with her cookery show. And as I've told you, Netflix are basically saying, well, what are you going to do to promote the next bit of the show? And that now is problematic. Season 2, as she liked to point out on Instagram. Here's where it gets really interesting, in my opinion, though, simply because if you also look at it, what is the interest factor so far to see season 2 of Meghan cooking and sprinkling flowers and pots of jam or whatever? Well, behind the scenes, as I told you before, whenever you work for a major corporation, and the late and brilliant Joan Rivers pointed this out to me, eventually if you're not delivering, they will turn on you. And that's exactly what's happening to literally Meghan and Harry. You see, behind the scenes, they're looking at their very own documentary by reaching out to certain individuals, not necessarily just about Meghan and Harry, but what they were inspired by was a recent appearance over on Australian television by this man, Jason North, the one-time communications officer for Meghan and Harry, and of course latterly the Prince and Princess of Wales, Catherine and William. Now here's where it gets interesting, because of course he spoke about his time very briefly, all that sort of stuff, but what was interesting in particular was the fact that they were inspired by this man literally set off the entire bullying claims against Meghan and Harry. And this is normally what happens with a channel, a company. They look at the commodity that they've got, they look at what you've delivered and whether they feel they've got their money, or in fact, do you still have any, what's the word, longevity in the period that they're looking at. And what they were looking at, listening to Jason North, and indeed the story, was exactly how he stood out, and basically decided to protect his staff. These were the staff, of course, that the Queen then started a private investigation with and concluded keeping it private. If you remember, Harry and Meghan wanted this out in the public domain. That was a few years back. Now, of course, in the public domain, we have other stories regarding Prince Harry being of a similar nature, as ever allegedly, particularly with his latest charity crisis sent to Bali. But it was the Meghan aspect that they were very keen on. And according to a source, the idea really is to look at it and placate and present both sides. That is the side of what Harry and Meghan have stated previously, and of course this particular man who worked as their head of communications. Now Jason North has relocated out of the United Kingdom and started his own business, and would, in my opinion, not be available for something like this. But he may want to talk on camera, for a right price of course, about the sort of money, take two. But he may of course want to talk on camera about his time, as he did on 60 Minutes over in Australia, about what it was like for working for a short period for the most famous, infamous couple in the world. This can only be bad news once again for Meghan Markle, because as she's trying to push the second series of that cooking show, clearly, as it was stated across the media, Netflix staff are already over it and are moving on. And by looking out at exactly how they can come up with a money-making documentary to recoup back a lot of the millions that they've lost already, it looks like Meghan and Harry may have to think of, well, another way to make sure that the famous saying, recollections may vary, could be put a stop to once and for all. Neil Sean in the very heart of Leeds.